Let's talk about that project you've been holding off on for far too long. You know the one, that comprehensive gallery of pizza-themed underwear. Or maybe you're trying to sell some pizza-themed underwear and you need an online storefront. Or perhaps you need to put a menu online for your local restaurant which sells underwear-themed pizza. What am I talking about? Okay, maybe your ambitions aren't quite that weird, or maybe they are. Either way, this is where our friends at Squarespace come in. I've personally always been intimidated at the idea of getting my own domain and my own little slice of the internet, but it took me just a handful of minutes to get down the basics once I checked out Squarespace myself. It really is that easy. They walk you through everything. And after that, it was just super fun customizing everything to my heart's content. Heck, if you already have a domain name, you could just transfer it over with their easy-to-use tools and do whatever you want with it. And if you're wanting to take whatever project you're working on seriously, the tools to track your growth, put together your own ad campaigns, integrate with social media platforms, everything you need to be a functioning business is right here and just as easy to understand. It's very little effort to get something clean and professional up in front of the world. Trust me, nothing feels quite as cool as having your own domain on a business card. And to make it even easier, if you head over to squarespace.com/gameapologist, you will get 10% off your first purchase. Thank you again to Squarespace for supporting the channel, and let's get back to it. Welcome back to Sonic Speed Reading, and we're doing things a little differently today. If you're new here, usually the show is basically a summary of a story of one of the many Sonic comics to help streamline and make sense of things, as there are a great deal of Sonic canons, but that's a little harder to do when it comes to the current IDW Sonic, as it's an ongoing series, and I usually like to wait for an arc to wrap up before we go over it and I give some kind of a review, as you can't get the full scope of a writer's intentions with one single issue these days. Of course, that's excluding annuals and special event books. That, and it just kind of feels weird having so many people in the comments demanding I review whatever brand new issue comes out as soon as it comes out, because they're relying on my videos to keep up with the current story. I'm happy to read along with stories you've experienced before, and I feel great when I inspire others to go check out a book I enjoy, but this series was never intended to be treated as a replacement to reading the actual comic book. Go support the current creative team. These things only cost you like $4 a month. Made it pretty clear in the last speed reading video that I was going to take a break from the main series so Evan Stanley had a chance to at least get through one new arc before we started picking everything apart. But if you haven't read the current issue in the main series, I highly recommend it. It's pretty badass. All that said, it is very hard to wait a few months to talk about the brand new Sonic mini-series, Scrapnik Island. As of this video, there's only one issue out, and it's only been out for like a week or something like that. And while this first chapter really only exists as setup for whatever comes up next, they do a lot of cool things that make me want to speculate on what comes next. So this isn't going to be a standard speed reading summary or even a review. From what we've gotten so far, I do absolutely love it, and if that's all you needed me to say, then have at it. Go nuts. Go buy it. Go read it. It's a fantastic time. But if that's not enough to get you onto the hype train, then let me go over some things that I've been thinking about after I've read this book and focus on some fun key scenes and characters and stuff like that. So yes, obviously spoilers for issue 1, but again, most of this is just here for build up. I'm not currently planning on dropping a new video with every issue of Scrapnik. Just going over all the fun setup from issue 1, speculate, and then see what we get right once the entire story is wrapped up, and then we'll do a more standard speed reading at that point. So yeah, if you're on the fence, this is me telling you to get off the fence. Go buy it. Alright, so let's go over the summary they gave us as this book was first announced. Scrapnik Island is a 4-part mini-series, and if you're unfamiliar with those, they are here as side stories that don't interrupt whatever is going on in the main series of books. And so far, they also help elevate characters and plots of the main book, if not being flat out integral, as we saw with the recent issue 50. What makes this series so interesting is that it stars Sonic and Tails. Up until now, these stories have focused on secondary characters, leaving the main book for Sonic himself, except for those couple of times when the main series gave the girls the spotlight. So I guess it doesn't actually matter, but who cares about who stars in what? The point is, it gives us more stories in this world with these characters that we love. And I certainly hope that Scrapnik does eventually wrap back into the rest of the main comic canon, because there are a lot of implications with just this first issue. But even more important than that is the fact that Scrapnik marks the debut of Daniel Barnes as a full-on Sonic comic writer. He has written for IDW Sonic before, and recently he did a story for the 2022 annual, but this is his first time doing a full full-on multi-issue story. He has worked on other stuff you've probably heard of, like Agretsuko, Guild Wars 2, and has done some fan projects for both Mario and Sonic, which you have more than likely have seen around if you dabble in either fandom, or if you're just a Sonic fan on Twitter, you have seen this dude around. He has made no mystery that he loves the Blue Quill Man as much as the rest of us weirdos. His story is brought to life with the art of Jack Lawrence and the colors of Nathalie Fordrain, and I apologize if I'm saying those names incorrectly. And of course, shoutouts to the other people in the credits here, lettering by Sean Lee and editors Riley Farmer and David Mariotti, or Mariotti? Someone tell me how to say these names, I have no idea. I feel like the credits are probably a bit longer than what we see here, as Nathalie posted the turnarounds for Mecha Sonic on Twitter, and we'll be getting back to that robot, don't you worry. And I have seen other artists post contribution Scrapnik designs also on Twitter. I have to do better with celebrating all of the creative teams of these books, but we can't break them all down now. I just wanted to spotlight Daniel since this is his first full story, but also wanted to be sure to mention the artist because this book is very, very pretty. Growing up with early Archie, while I respect those artists, a lot just weren't great for Sonic, at least not those stylized designs from the games. But in later years, and especially in IDW, the art has been incredible, and Scrapnik might be one of the prettiest I have ever seen, using the colors to capture the tone of each scene. I mean, seriously, in the first few pages, you see a striking amount of changes, and it always fits with whatever's happening. The heavy greens with that sickly seawater mixed with electricity, those deep, dirty blues after Sonic wakes up on the island, that burning, glowing red-orange when everyone's in danger. It's so good. You can smell the old oil and dust and the cold of all the concrete and metal, and later on, after they walk into the sunlight, and it goes from dreadful and scary to immediately friendly and warm, and none of it feels jarring. It all flows together beautifully, and it's amazing how much of a story they're telling with just the color direction and the lighting and the little details like rust and dirt, and it's just wonderful. I'm geeking out just as much as Tails is here. What a precious boy. And that reminds me, outside of using the colors to capture the tone of each scene, they also have incredibly expressive line work, letting us know exactly how Sonic and Tails feel at any given moment. And yes, Daniel captures their personalities just as well as everybody else. I really need to cover that annual. It was so much fun. Jack has always done a great job with these characters, but they also have to deal with a lot of characters who can't actually move their faces considering they're made out of metal. And even then, they manage to bring out personality with these robots. And all of this is incredibly important because Scrapnik Island is a horror story. Yeah, this has been pitched as a Halloween special of sorts for Sonic the Hedgehog. Not something incredibly common in this franchise, but you could make the argument that horror is actually a fairly consistent genre in the IDW run of Sonic, as a large chunk of the book had been consumed by the Metal Virus saga. That story wasn't full-on horror, but it did deal with robot zombies, so yeah. If you dig that darker, scarier stuff, you're going to love Scrapnik. Just don't be fooled by the friendly robots. You know something is going to go wrong while they are on this island. They do a great job of alluding to that with the tone of everything that happens right after the storm, before they reveal that all the robots are actually friendly. This helps establish what this book is going to be in terms of what a Sonic horror story is, but it also lets us know right up front that these robots are characters in their own right, with their own lives, their own feelings, their own civilization. So no matter how scary they might end up being, they are worth saving and preserving, and I can't wait to talk about that even further once we have more of this story, as artificial life has been an important theme for all of IDW Sonic. Also, quick note here, I do love that they established the original Motobug design, showing us that it was indeed an older model, as they do have the more current generation style Motobug currently in the mainline book. Scrapnik is full of little details like that, and I greatly appreciate it. But yeah, as you can see, Scrapnik leans heavily into that haunted house vibe, or at the very least, the vibes of being underneath the bed of Sid from Toy Story. I'm not sure where the narrative's gonna go, but the concept is simple enough to understand. It's an island full of broken badniks scrapped together and brought back to a functioning form that Sonic and Tails crash on due to a lightning storm, leaving them trapped with the many resurrected robots that they had defeated over their many many adventures. So yeah, it's kind of more robot zombies in a way, but this is still a fantastic concept. One that, ironically enough, was itself recycled. This might remind you of the Island of Misfit Badniks storyline from Archie, which we have covered in our Pseudo-Sonic video. And I liked that concept there too, but considering it was a backup story, that idea didn't really go anywhere. So I'm glad to see it being brought back, robo-copy of Sonic and all. And outside of this series, this is something I have seen before in mainstream superhero comics, many times. That being taking what was once a silly concept contained in a single issue, now being blown out and fully explored in a larger narrative. For example, brain swapping is a pretty tired trope you've probably seen plenty of times in vintage superhero comics or cartoons. But then Superior Spider-Man comes along and really explores the idea of a supervillain parading around as their greatest enemy, and now that's one of my favorite Spidey stories ever told. Sure, the idea has been explored before, but now it's handed off to someone who was inspired and now has the means to fully expand on the idea and take it in new directions. And obviously, it's already clear to see that Scrapnik Island will be a completely different beast from Misfit Badniks, even if there isn't technically a whole lot happening in issue 1. All that really happens so far is that Sonic and Tails crash on the island, establish what the island is, and a couple of the key members of said island, those being E-117, clearly from the same line of bots as the beloved Gamma. Good to see E-100 back in action, and also scrapped together with some bits of an egg robo. That's a smart combination. This bot acts as the voice for the Scrapniks, at least for now, as none of the others seem to have the ability to speak. I'm excited to see more of this robot, but who cares? Mecha Sonic is back! Oh my sweet boy. Oh my god, I missed you so much. Look, I love Metal Sonic, I do. I think he's one of the greatest Evil Double characters, his design is peak, and out of all the Sonic bots, he is the most perfect one to match against Sonic, and I don't care how overused he is, I'm always happy to see him. But Mecha Sonic, man. Oh my god, Mecha Sonic. I'm going to save the deep dive for his own video, but spoilers, this dude is going to be my main talking point for this video, so you're just going to have to deal with that. Yeah, sorry, this is largely an excuse to talk about this guy. I am so happy he's back. And if you've been on this channel before, then you know how much Sonic 3 Knuckles means to me, and in turn, how much this badass Badnik means to me. I'm so happy he's finally back in a comic. This dude could not catch a break for the longest time. Again, we'll get into it in his own video. He has had good runs in Fleetway, and I guess Archie did their own thing based off his look, but this poor bot was denied a true, proper introduction in Archie as they canceled the book right before the issue he was set to debut in. The same issue where they were retelling the story of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I'm always going to be upset about that. What's worse, he's never had official art. Again, we'll get into it in his own dedicated video, but the Sonic 3 Knuckles sprites are all that have ever existed for a reference, as far as we know anyway. If there is concept art, we've never seen it, meaning that we could be missing out on some crucial details like his arms. What are those supposed to be? Ball joints? Pistons? I don't know. Both of those were commonplace in Badnik designs, so I can't really tell without seeing some artwork. And just look at this dude. Clearly there's a lot going on in this design. So I'm incredibly thankful that this comic came around and gave us a clear picture on what he is supposed to be. We've had returning characters based off original art like Metal Knuckles, but others based off in-game sprites like that Mark I Mecha Sonic released last year, even though that bot has known concept art out there. So it wouldn't surprise me if they did the same thing with this upgraded S3K look. Those squared off fingers and nose give me pixely vibes. But whatever the original intention was, he still looks amazing. And this is probably as official of a design as we are ever going to get, and that is just fine with me. Even if they never polish up the guy, the rust looks really cool. I love that tattered white cape. It's just a great look. And just as important as the design is his characterization. All he has ever been before was a boss fight for Sonic and Knuckles. And there's a great deal we can interpret and theorize from those fights, and I kinda already have in previous videos, and you better believe I will again in the future. Again, wait for March, it's gonna be nuts. But regardless of whatever I brew up in my own imagination, there really just isn't anything outside of that game to work with. Regardless of what order those original games are in a fictional timeline, back in the 90s or now in Sonic Origins, this version of Mecha Sonic was designed in real life after the creation of Metal Sonic, and I've always wondered why Sonic Team made an entirely new design after going so hard promoting Metal. And before you say that Mecha is built for power and Metal is built for speed, please remember that I'm the one that told you that 3 years ago. Please stop quoting me to myself myself on Twitter. I have my theories in terms of fiction. Again, we will get into it in a different video, but I ask this question because they've given Metal all the cool abilities once they reintroduced him in the franchise, even charging up with the Master Emerald, so that's no longer unique to Mecha, making him really and truly redundant and, yeah, obsolete, which is why his return, along with the other failed Robotnik bots, is so intriguing to me. Yeah, of course there's a heavy element of nostalgia and fan service that cannot be denied, but even if I don't have the full story just yet, it's pretty clear that Daniel isn't just doing this for the sake of pointing at a thing and saying, hey, remember this? This feels like a continuation and growth of a character that never really had a chance to grow. It's not like he had much to do in those games, but we do know that he was an antagonist, so seeing him peaceful here shows us a massive change already. That powerful stoic stance in the game is now used to express something a little more noble. Maybe he's a protector to all these smaller Scrapniks, and while it's kinda hard to tell since he can't speak, I get the impression that he's a little less impulsive than the real Sonic, whose first instinct is to leap into action, spin dash first and ask questions later. And for real, who could blame Sonic? This is a spooky situation. But the point is, Mecha Sonic has to express himself without a voice, just like our boy Metal. But even mute, we are being shown a completely different character. They allude to a more violent program brewing below the surface, whether that be from old Eggman code, a new technovirus, or some scrambling thanks to the storm, or some combination of all that, we will see. Even if he is a reformed robot, you can't have Mecha show back up and not have some kind of cool fight with Sonic. Speaking of, I do appreciate that they also handicap the hedgehog. Terrifying and creepy as this island may be, it's ultimately a glorified junkyard filled with robots that Sonic has already beaten. As powerful as Mecha Sonic still looks to be, he has rusted over and relies on random robot parts to replace busted limbs. I was about to say that the worst Mecha Sonic can do is give Sonic tetanus, but I just looked it up and it turns out that rust doesn't actually cause that, so yeah, the poor bastard can't even rely on that. Neither hedgehog, be it robot or flesh, is at their peak, so putting them on more equal footing is a nice touch, even though that technically means we have two concurrent Sonic stories where he busts his leg from a crash. A bit redundant, but it works, and I also love that his leg brace looks like a jigsaw trap. As for Mecha Knuckles, well, we have to wait and see, as they only reveal him at the end of the first issue, which is surprising, because if you were following the previews and teases as this book was first announced and leading up to the release, the first big reveal was Mecha Knuckles. We were later teased with Mecha Sonic in the background of a junk pile of a secondary cover of issue 1, and then later we got a full reveal of the character when they showed off the cover for issue 2, but I honestly wasn't expecting so much Mecha Sonic right at the start of the story. I thought we were going to get Mecha Knuckles first, and then the Sonic bot would show up later, but no, turns out that's the opposite. It looks like Mecha Sonic is here as a major character, even if he ends up being a reluctant antagonist for a part of it. I'm really excited to see where this thing goes for both Mecha Sonic and Knuckles. Of course, the E100 bot as well, which again, hey, that's great, but I'm sorry, I can't help but be excited for Mecha Sonic. I'm a dirty 90s kid, I can't help it. Whatever ends up happening, I really do hope these robots are allowed to stick around afterwards. I don't want them killed off, even though for all we knew up to this point, they were still busted to bits, but Mecha Sonic already is showing so much growth from what he used to be. I'm excited to see what he could potentially be as his own character, one separate from Metal and even Sonic himself. And obviously, I hope the same for Mecha Knuckles, even if his design is trash compared to Metal Knuckles. That's at least what I originally thought when I came across him in Sonic Advance, and I've made that opinion no mystery. But I gotta say, this comic is turning my opinion around on him just with this look alone. Filled to the brim with filthy references. Shovel Claw, OVA hat, and that mace is just a great touch. They even have the yellow socks and his original yellow gloves, which in turn could have been references to the S3K Mist color and the Adventure fighting gloves. Not sure what's going on with the right foot there, so if that's another reference, just let me know. But whatever the case, I have to admit, this guy looks really cool. He looks creepy, he looks powerful, he looks like he's trouble, and I'm excited to see more. I hope he ends up being something like the guardian of Scrapnik Island and this mysterious flower. They really focus on it for a second, but then just as quickly move on. It's obviously important, but I have no idea why yet. Best guess I have, something has to be powering these badniks. Remember, most of these classic bots were powered by living critters, and Sonic CD did establish that they can function off of plant life, so maybe the sunflower is somehow helping them sustain life. Obviously, that's not easy to do if the flower is outside of the robots, but maybe it's a tether for other plant life within within the robots, or maybe it acts as a solar panel, and that's also why they have that climate machine from the Death Egg. I don't know, but I'm guessing it's an energy source vital to the island, just like the Master Emerald is to Angel Island. But speaking of the Death Egg, of course I love seeing that here. It's like Rise of Skywalker, but if it was, you know, good. Look, if we're going to recycle robots, we can also recycle pop culture references and make them better. Why not? I don't ever remember them giving a proper reason why the Death Egg was such a threat in the old games, but you could assume a lot, especially since, again, it was based off a very famous Star Wars base that could destroy planets, but we never actually got to see what this thing was capable of. The comics, of course, did their own thing with their own canons, and they were pretty cool ideas. And Sonic 4 was potentially leading somewhere, and forces its let's just use as a prison, I guess. But here in Scrapnik, not only do they refer to this as the first Death Egg, alluding to the fact that there were more made after this one, could be referring to Sonic Forces or Sonic 4, maybe even Sonic the Fighters. Hopefully all of them. But hey, it's nice that they're establishing that classic stuff happened with modern Sonic, as that was a concern for a little while. But back to the Death Egg, it's also the reason why Sonic and Tails were stranded in the first place, as it was the Death Egg's climate disruptor going on the fritz that caused the storm that crashed the tornado. And this gives us the hint at the capability of the original machine, and maybe even its intent. I'm sure it's going to end up being important outside of just establishing our characters on this island, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm not going to mention every single little Easter egg and reference from this one book, there's a lot, but I do of course have to mention Sonic Adventure's Egg Carrier. Clearly there's a lot of love for S3K and Adventure already on display in this one book, but I have to wonder why the Egg Carrier is here at all. From what I can see, at least in the characterization of robots, this isn't simply for the sake of a reference. They make too much of a deal about showing it off, so there has to be some plot importance. It could have at the very least served as an excuse for the E100 bot to be here, but there just has to be more to this. That said, I do love the attention to detail in the damage, showing where it was blasted by Perfect Chaos at the end of Adventure. Alright, I guess that was the second Egg Carrier. I kind of forgot they swapped those out super quickly. Yeah, never mind, I guess it's just the first one that Sonic wrecked. I don't know, maybe they'll clear that up for us. And while I know this was in the jungle base in Sonic Adventure and not the Egg Carrier, it does make me wonder if we're going to have anything happen with Mecha Sonic Mark III. It's not my favorite design, but I would love some narrative explaining why this stupid thing even exists at all. But hey, even if that never happens, they did bring back the best version of Mecha Sonic, so I can't complain. I'm more than content. And hey, just to continue being greedy and a bit fanfiction-y, you know, a conversation at IDW about having Metal Sonic fight Mecha Sonic had to happen at some point, right? Having the metals fight the mechas is reason enough to keep these characters around once this story wraps up. I don't know, but the tone of the book was really well established. I immediately fell in love with these new characters, and I love these creepy, cute creations. I want to defend them with my life. I love seeing more of the game-focused world of the IDW version of Sonic get a bit more fleshed out, taking all of these abandoned ideas and creating something new and beautiful out of it. I kind of feel like that's the entire point of the story, even if it is horror themed. Like I said, they went out of their way to show us that this is its own society, and there's a life beyond the servitude of Eggman. And I really love that there's an E100 series here. I'm very glad they didn't bring back Gamma. I feel like that would ruin his story if they resurrected him. But that robot did help establish the idea of free will in artificial beings, at least in terms of Sonic game canon. And seeing that flourish all these years later and inspire some incredible storytelling, well, that's just beautiful. I have to wait to see the rest of the story, but for me, at least right now, this is how you do nostalgia. You don't just bring it back and put it on display. Time didn't just stand still while this character was left unused for decades on end. Time has passed and stories have happened. That is worth exploring. It's like catching up with an old friend, seeing what's going on in their lives. And while I might be projecting here, I do still feel like a major theme here is something I keep expressing on this channel whenever we talk about old Sonic stuff. Everything deserves a second look. Everything deserves a second chance. Don't just throw the stuff in the trash. Embrace it, recycle it, give it a new function, continue to expand and explore all the possibilities, because so much is just left in the scrap pile when it comes to the Sonic franchise. And from what I can tell, they found the right people to dive in and explore. So yeah, that's all I really have to say, and I know that was a bit scattershot. Like I said, I wasn't really necessarily here to give you a play-by-play summary. We will do that after the story wraps up. I just really wanted to speculate and talk about all these ideas. I've been very, very excited for Scrapnik Island, and so far, it's been blowing my expectations out of the water. This is an amazing debut of a great new writer, and I really hope he sticks around. We need more talented, passionate folks like this in the franchise. And hey, let me know what you thought. Was this a bit too confusing for you? Were you keeping up just fine? Do you have your own theories or thoughts? Let me know. I do have a lot of videos coming down the pipeline, keep promising a new Klonoa video, and some other non-Sonic content, but hey, we're about to get a brand new Sonic game. At least for now, I'm just gonna fully embrace it. Why not? Sonic the Hype Hog. And if you're not already subscribed to see all that, what are you even doing with your life? And hey, I do have a Patreon. I release stuff a little earlier and ad-free for them. Gets you access to our Discord server, some other weird random nonsense that I'm always trying to work on. A big thank you from me, like right now. Thank you guys, seriously, I greatly appreciate it. And for a little extra, some people have me say their names out loud because they're just sick weirdos like that. Let's shame them right now. Kyle Winter, Cirrus the Skeptic, Joseph Duncan Sonic 2 Blue, John, Josh Strider, Mecha Monroe, Faizan Razul, Zanroni the Painter, Hatsworth, Ginger Bob, Jack of All Spades, Tristan Trapp, Meekers, Dun Dun, quote, Resident Fanboy, Miles the Prower, Jeremy Singer, Mr. Boo J, World's Greatest Bard, Rain, Sam Webster, Dwight Graham, Fish Flop, Lucas Lipker, The Bad Pal, Jonathan Dobbs, Cloverhood, Shoden, Mr. SP, Cecil the Galade, The Dark Neon, Stefan Plakanica, 3 Monic, Ty Cyan, Graham J. Hall, Lenny X, Wayne is Boss, Jamie Chevalier, Letteric, David 2, Ryan Rolfs, The Lumberjack, Wiki, give me that funky beat. Yo, my name is McNick and I'm on the web, I'm on the gist. You can call me Icky Nicky because my rhymes are sick. Thank you, Otis. NBTV, Mute, Trash Baphomet, Autumn from Twitter.com, that _ T-Elos _ main, Mui Saxy, Jin Seotame, Loka Brenna, Nezen, Enerjack5, Grayson Conager, Spades the Nocturne, Ken K, Then 101, Paxton Bisbee, Sindarin 7, Stevie Cole, 3 Rule 4, Twilord, Asir Warrens of a Deadly Fate, Paisley, Eric Delgado, Cody Gracius, Kodinsky, Jamo Art, PK Durban, Give Up Your Children, Separate, Sonic PAJ, Zygarde Lagon. And if any haters say I'm not funny on YouTube, I let them know I got sponsored saying toot toot wiggity wiggity word up Mr. Boojay. Otis, your commitment to the bit is commendable. Roxas the Cat, Blake Smith, Godzilla, Infamous.png, and Jacob Zabo. Guys, I know a lot of you have been around for quite a bit, and I greatly thank you. I'm quite familiar with your names, and I love chatting with you all on Discord and Twitter, wherever else we're being weirdos. But I have noticed an influx both in upping your Patreon amount or even jumping up to this new tier, and I know a lot of that is because of my recent medical garbage that I just went through, and while I don't still know what the damage is financially, I do sincerely appreciate knowing that there are so many people out there who have my back. Whatever happens, I know I made the right choice in terms of a career. So thank you for your support, thank you for believing in me, and I can't thank you enough. So that mushy business aside, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all next time. Happy Halloween, Sonic Warriors!
And we're at Pumpkin Hill. You ready? I ain't gonna let it get to me. I'm just gonna